Hey guys, Tammy here, and in this video, I'm going to give you my top 3 tips for dealing with messages with your co-parent. Now, I know this can be a really frustrating area for a lot of people because that message comes from your co-parent and you get that knot in the pit of your stomach, right? I even have some clients who pay me to manage their communication on an ongoing basis so they don't have to look at it every day. That's how much stress the messaging can create for people. Before we dive in, let me real quick remind you that if you like these videos, please hit like and also subscribe to the channel so you get notified as new videos are released. There's a lot of different tips that I can give you for the messaging and dealing with this, but I'm going to give you my top 3. I can't go into all of them in the time that we have, but I'm going to give you my top 3. So the first one is, are you giving a command or are you asking a question? Now, many times, and guys, I think you're worse for this. I'll just say it. And, you can leave me all the hate messages below that you want to. But I think guys tend to just be more direct and say, I need the information. I need you to send me the time. I need you to do this. I need you to do that. Well, part of the problem is I think that can make you come across as too bullying, maybe is a good word for it in the court's eyes. Like you're being difficult, you're combative. It sort of gives that impression. And I think it's kind of hard in the messaging because so many times, it's hard to know how to interpret those things because we don't have the inflection. We don't have the body language. We don't have all those things. So we have to be really cognizant of how those things are coming across when we do that type of messaging. And if you do have an ex that's high conflict and that's difficult to deal with, and you're sending that kind of message, if your ex in the past has said, oh, you're controlling or you're bullying or you're any of those things, and, hey, high five to my fellow control enthusiasts, as Thomas like to call me. So I'm not pointing the finger on being controlling, but I'm saying that if that is something that bothered your ex or that they have brought up that was problematic during the relationship, and then you're doing it in the messaging, that's probably going to result in a negative interaction with them. Let's face it, a smooth co-parenting relationship can hugely impact your level of peace and happiness in your life, and a difficult one can hugely impact negatively your level of peace and happiness in your life. So having a good co-parenting relationship, honestly, it cannot be overrated. It can really have a big impact on you. And, if you can't have a really good cooperative one at this stage, at least let's do everything we can to not have a super negative one that is giving us that sick feeling in the pit of our stomach every time we have to deal with a message from them. If you are sending things in commands, I would encourage you to please phrase it in a question. Like, if you need to know the time, instead of saying, I need you to send me the time options that would work. Say, could you please send me, what times might work for you tomorrow? If we're talking about like maybe a phone call with the kids or whatever. And just phrase it in that question, like to where you're not like, give me this, but, could you let me know? Type of thing. Number 2, this one comes up for almost everyone. Almost every single person that I talk to for the first time about a messaging issue is doing this. And that is too many words. It's too long. Let's say that you have a situation where your child's acting out. Okay, let's just use that for an example. And let's say you send your co-parent a message and you say, hey, the child's been acting out a lot. I noticed that they've had some disciplinary issues at school. I'm having the same struggles at home. I'm thinking it might be good to get them into therapy. Would you be agreeable to that? I would have phrased it, what do you think about that? Or, I always like to try to give the other person the option so that they feel they're in control, especially if you're dealing with somebody that's high conflict. But however you phrased it, let's just say you said, would you agree with that or whatever? Let's say the other person comes back and says something along the lines of, well, I don't have these problems at my house. You have these problems at your house because you don't discipline them enough. And if you were disciplining them the way that you should, they wouldn't be acting out like this because they don't ever act out at my home. So really the problem is you, not the child. Let's say that's the message that comes back. Okay, first problem, there's no question in there for you to answer, right? There's nothing. That's all just attacks. That's all that is. There's no actual question. Our tendency of how we want to respond to this is by saying, well, it's not that I'm not disciplined. It's that the child is so terrified of you that they hold in their emotions until they get back to my house, which is the safe space where they finally let all their emotions show, or they let it show at school because you're not there for them to be terrified of you. That's how we want to respond, right? But that's not going to be helpful. If I got that message from the other parent saying that it was all my fault that the child's acting out, I would simply send a message back that says, so are you in agreement with getting them into therapy? That's it. 2 lines. Nothing else needs to be said, because anything else is just arguing over their points. I had somebody send me an example of a message one time, and it was a dad I was working with, and he said, hey, here's her message and my response. Can you tell me if I should send this? And this is going to get into my third point. But I read it, and it was 2 messages like that, like arguing about whether to put the child in therapy or not, where they were both doing the same thing and just arguing their points. And I came back to him and I said, well, and he wasn't nasty in the message. I mean, he was nice. It was fine. It was a perfectly cordial message. There was no issue. He just didn't solve the problem. He just kept the wheel of argument going. I wrote back and I said, you're not offering any solution to this. So that's the next question we have to ask ourselves is, am I offering a solution? What's the solution to the problem that we're discussing? Okay. If it's that somebody left a math book at your house and they need it, okay, the answer is either yes, you can come get it, no, you can't, or here's an alternative solution. I could drop it off to you after my appointment at 7. Whatever. Like, look for the solution. When the other parent is saying, I feel this way, and you're saying, I feel this way, that's not getting us to a solution. That's perpetuating an emotional argument, and it doesn't help. And what it does, in addition to not helping, is it makes you look bad to the court, and it deteriorates your co-parenting relationship, which makes the other parent even harder to deal with. You really have to stay focused on what's the problem that we're trying to solve. And if you get something from the other parent that's just attacking in that way, then your job is to bring it back around into that solution focused, response. If you're sending more than 2 or 3 lines most of the time, it's probably too long. I had a client last week who sent me a screenshot of a few text messages that she had sent. Well, actually it was on one of the parenting apps that she had sent. And I essentially went through and carved them up. And one of them was about 10 sentences on the app. And I whittled it down to about 2 and sent back. And the other one was about 5 sentences. And I whittled it down to 1 and sent it back and said, here's how I would have responded. Everything else that you're putting in there is emotional. And she was like, oh, and she's like, I'm starting to see what you're talking about, because it's real easy for us to feel like we're pulling the emotions out of it and that we're only saying the truth or whatever. But it's not usually true. Usually we're still putting in emotions. They might be emotions around this specific issue that we're dealing with, but they're still emotions. If you're not talking about logistical issues of times and drop-offs and medication to be administered and, forms that need to be filled out and turned in and very logistical things, everything else is usually emotions. That doesn't really get us anywhere. And a lot of times we do have people around us, like friends, family, whatever, that are checking the messages for us and maybe trying to help us. But if that person has an emotional investment in you, then they're going to have a hard time being an objective person that can actually look at that message. If this is let's say it's your sibling and your sibling's been through this whole, divorce and child custody issue with you, and your sibling, dealt with your ex-spouse and knows how difficult they were because they were their in-law for X number of years and all that kind of thing, that sibling's going to have a hard time being objective in that situation because they love you, they care about you, and they're upset as well for everything that this person has caused, or the harm that they've done or the damage that they've done in your lives. Many times we can think we're being non-emotional and we really aren't. So remember, don't give commands, ask questions. Cut down on the length because it's probably too long in most cases. And offer solutions instead of arguing your position. Those are my top 3 tips for you. If you'd like to learn more about my coaching services and how I can help support you on this journey, please go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. You can book a free strategy session and learn how I can help you in your child custody situation. All right. See you guys next time.
We'll grow in number, fueled by them to see the horizon, turn us to thousands.